Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and you're about to hear one of my Genius Network interviews, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you find it very useful. If you want to find out more information about some of the interviews and resources that can help you in your business, you can go to www.joepolish.com. And we have a Joe Polish Recommends section with all kinds of resources and vendors and services and products that we recommend that can help you in your business. And also for more useful interviews and a whole list of other people that I've interviewed, you can go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks and enjoy the interview.
Dan Sullivan is the founder of Strategic Coach, a high-level coaching program for entrepreneurs. Joe Polish is the founder of Piranha Marketing and Genius Network Mastermind, the highest level mastermind group for direct response marketers. Now, what you're about to hear is a special live recording for a program called Mastering Self-Esteem in honor of Nathaniel Branden. This conversation with Joe and Dan was so highly revered and popular, it garnered positive feedback from some of the most influential people to which it was sent. Now, you're about to learn the secrets of how to have more success, more respect, and more fulfillment in your life and business. And now, here's Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish.
Hello, this is Joe Polish, and I want to welcome you to the next Mastering Self-Esteem call that we're doing. And this is going to be with one of the most amazing people that I know, Mr. Dan Sullivan, who's in Toronto right now. How are you doing, Dan?
Hi, Joe. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, as always. And let me give some context for everyone on behalf of myself and Evan and, everyone that you've heard from so far. I'm really, really super excited about doing this particular interview with Dan on the subject of mastering self-esteem because not only has he been my personal coach for the last 13-plus years, he's one of the most amazing, astonishing, brilliant people that I do know. He also has, from anyone that I've ever met, he's a genuinely happy human being, very high self-esteem, high confidence, and he's helped some of the most successful people in the world obtain that also because he founded a company called Strategic Coach, which is really known through lots of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world as the top coaching organization in the world for highly successful entrepreneurs that go out and make their living creating value for other human beings. And so I don't know a better individual that could add a whole new perspective on everything that you've been learning so far in this program than Mr. Dan Sullivan. So having said that, Dan, I'll ask you to kind of maybe define who the heck is Dan Sullivan and what qualifies you to talk about the subject of self-esteem.
Yeah, well, as you indicated, my focus, and this goes back to 1974, Joe, is strictly highly successful entrepreneurs. So these are individuals who've declared a very fundamental path of independence in their life and have followed it. In most cases, by the time that we're talking to them, they're probably 15, 20 years into their entrepreneurial career. And so by the standards of the world, from accomplishment and lifestyle that they have in an external way, and also their the amount of money that they make, these are extraordinarily successful individuals, very, very high on the scale of people you would admire and respect. But one of the things that I noticed as I began working with them, and personally I've dealt with 6,000, so I've got a lot of hours logged in actual one-on-one conversations with these individuals, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 or 20,000 hours that I've spent with them. There's a clear-cut pattern that people can be very successful on the outside, and yet not have a great sense of self-esteem on the inside. And it's the strangest thing because from an outside standpoint, you'd think, why wouldn't this individual just be totally happy and satisfied? And so I've really made a study of this, just this one kind of individual. So, I probably have logged in put in more time with just this one kind of human being than anyone probably in history. I don't think anyone's ever spent this amount of time with really successful entrepreneurs. So I did it for 15 years one-on-one, and then in '89 we started the program, Joe, that you're a member of, And so we do it in groups of entrepreneurs, and typically for me it would be in the 40 to 50 range. I would have that number of people in the world in the room together, and they do a lot of coaching with each other, so it creates a very dynamic atmosphere because you've got these people who each in their own world is the kingpin, but now I've got them in the room with 45, 50 other individuals who are like them, and it's just a very dynamic thing. But this pattern of low self-esteem with high achievers is very, very interesting, and so I've developed a lot of strategies around it, and the three strategies that I would like to contribute to Nathaniel's project are three that have just proven very, very highly successful for getting people onto a path where they just develop a much higher sense of happiness with themselves, a sense of satisfaction with, so that what's going on the inside starts matching what it looks like on the outside.
Awesome. Well, we'll cover those then. So, and before we go into that, you do know Nathaniel personally, and I'd like to ask you to maybe share some of your experiences with maybe the last time you had dinner with Nathaniel.
Well, actually my connection with Nathaniel is through a really great client that I have who lives in Ojai, California, by the name of John Fickworth, and he divides his time between California and Switzerland. And John has known Nathaniel for years and years, and so one time when I was visiting Santa Monica, Nathaniel came down and spent breakfast with us. Now, I knew Nathaniel a lot more than Nathaniel knew me, and the reason is because I got onto Ayn Rand very early, like a lot of people do. I was like 18 or 19 years old and read Ayn Rand, and then, associated with the Ayn Rand books, naturally you just go on to the Nathaniel Branden books, and I was very, very struck by the quality of his thinking, the depth of his thinking at a very early age. So I had been really, very familiar for many, many years before I ever met Nathaniel. So it was a great conversation, and, I don't get to Los Angeles that much, and so we really haven't connected from that one thing. But we spent a good couple hours at breakfast, and it was really great. My wife and I, Babs, and we were, it was a wide-ranging conversation, as you can imagine, with Nathaniel, and very insightful on his part. So when Eben and yourself, Joe, brought up the subject of just contributing to this series, I was just delighted with it.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I'm so happy that you're actually part of this too. So this is great. So I'm going to ask you about your concepts. I know one because you told me in advance about the Gap, and of course you created this even a knowledge product called the Gap, and it's something that you do. You've taught many entrepreneurs, and it's the experiences that have happened have been transformative on all levels, not just entrepreneurs, but this applies to pretty much any human being. So I'd love to have you start with that and explain what is the Gap, and maybe talk about how human beings measure that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty practiced with this one, Joe, because a mutual friend of ours, Richard Rossi, interviewed me yesterday for a package that's going out to his whole network, which are parents of high-achieving children. And, the issue of people being really successful and not feeling successful really shows up in the teenage years. Usually it's a high-achieving adolescent or teenager who's doing all the right things. They're stars in their class. They're great athletes. They're great students and everything else. And you'd think that they're like the all-American dream for a parent, and yet on the inside, none of that is being actually experienced. So I began thinking about that, and I came up with this concept. And Joe, you'll know that almost all the concepts in Strategic Coach come up in the course of conversation that are actually taking place in the workshop room. And so there's this one man I had in the room for a couple of years, and no matter how good he had done something, he had a way of really knocking himself down. And I just got really angry one day. I mean, angry as I ever get in a workshop. And I went up to the flip chart and I said, I want to show you what you're doing. And I showed sort of an outline of a human head up on the flip chart. And then I said, you know, what you have to understand is that there's a real difference between where we are at any time and the ideal. And I said, you know, whether you're going to be happy with your life or not depends upon how you measure your actually achievements and progress in life. And so I developed this whole model where I created a comparison between the ideal and another concept we have in our heads, which is used for measurement, and that's the horizon. And so, you know, when we're little and we're just getting used to the world around us, and one of the things that develops is a spatial sense. And, you know, there's some point, and it, you know, probably differs with every child, but you become aware that there's a place where the sky and the ground meet as you look out into the distance, and we call that a horizon, you know. And, I don't think it takes very long for us to realize that you can't get to the horizon. And we're okay with that. You know, sometimes jokingly I ask adults, I says, now, are there anyone in the room here who the fact that you can't get to the horizon really causes you a lot of mental anguish, a lot of emotional anguish? You know, I mean, are you okay with the fact that you can't get to the horizon? You know, and, you know, everybody gets a laugh about it. Of course, you know, everybody knows that you can't get to the horizon. As a matter of fact, the horizon doesn't actually exist in any real sense. You can't get to a spot called the horizon. It's a mental construct in our brains which allows us to come to grips with space, and it allows us to orient ourselves. And it's just a way that the brain works, and it's actually an acquired ability. It's a learned ability because children don't automatically have three-dimensional capabilities with their eyesight. It's something that develops. Children who are blind when they're born, but who acquire their sight later, don't understand the horizon, don't understand three-dimensionality. They have to learn that over a period of trial and error to get a sense that there's actually three dimensions. So, but we get this. I mean, if you're just born normal and you grow up under normal circumstances, you know, at a very early age, you get that you can't get to the horizon, and that doesn't cause you any anguish or upset. But it's strange that there's another construct in our brains that works exactly the same way, but it's not in relationship to space, it's in relationship to time. And that is, we call it the ideal. And the ideal serves exactly the same purpose in relationship to time as the horizon does in relationship to space. It's there for us to orient ourselves in regard to the future. And so it serves a lot of really useful purposes. And the biggest purpose that the ideal really allows us to do is really that we can set goals out of it. So we see the ideal ahead of us, and then somewhere between the ideal and where we are, we set a goal which is achievable. The goals are achievable. The ideal is not achievable. So I think of the ideal as sort of like a spotlight. It actually allows us to see ahead of us and actually put down a tangible goal, which over a period of time, taking a certain number of steps, we can actually get to that goal. And this, you know, what I'm describing, Joe, is just true for all human beings. It's like standard operating equipment on the human brain. And so everybody has this thing of having the ideal, establishing a goal, and then getting to the goal. Where the human race separates into two parts, where you have one group who are really successful and they're happy, there's another group who are really successful and they're unhappy, and it has to do with what happens when you get to the goal. Once you actually achieve the goal, how do you measure yourself? And we have to measure ourselves. You know, it's part of our nature that we have to measure what we're doing. And I say that there's kind of like a negative and a positive way of measuring. And the way to always produce a negative is to measure what you've accomplished against the ideal, because from the perspective of your achievement, from the perspective of the progress that you've made, it's like you haven't made any progress at all. You're still the same distance away from the ideal, in the same way that if you had run furiously for a couple hours, in a straight line. When you got finished, you're still the same distance from the horizon. Right. We don't beat ourselves up over the horizon, but there's a fair amount of human beings who beat themselves up over the ideal. So the key to happiness here is to never measure forwards, always measure backwards. And I'll just leave it at that, Joe, because there's a lot of dimensions that come out of that statement.
Yeah, well, it's a huge concept. It's something that absolutely can transform an individual. And I mean, you already know this and have experience with it. And I spent many years of my life in the gap and still fall into it. But had you not put me onto this early on, I mean, I think there's no way to even evaluate how much that concept has changed my thinking about what it is I do and feeling good about what it is I do. And like you'd mentioned in the very beginning, there's so many people that are very successful by other people's standards of money and relationships and what they've accomplished that are truly miserable human beings. I mean, me and you know one person who's very, very globally recognized, whose entire life this person lives in the gap because they've never, it's just how they measure. They just nothing's ever good enough. My question to you about this before we go on to some of the other concepts, because I think if people just really listen to what you just said, I mean, it's a lot. And what about, I guess, just habits in terms of wiring? You've spent 20 years measuring against the ideal, and all of a sudden you've now been introduced to this concept. It could take a lot of unraveling in order for this to become like a new way. I mean, as much as I would love to have everyone listening, from this point forward, you don't measure against the future ideal. You measure against where you were and where you are now and look at all the progress. But they've got this wiring of doing things a certain way, walking a certain way, and now we're saying, hey, you can walk this different way, and by doing so, your self-esteem is going to improve, your happiness is going to improve, everything could dramatically improve. But, I mean, how does one, I guess, make sure that they adopt it or speed up the process?
Yeah, I've come to the firm conviction that it doesn't do you any good to try to give up bad habits. The only thing you can do is crowd them out with new good habits. In other words, you only have a certain amount of time in the day. And if most of the time is being used up with bad habits now, I'm just going to reclaim my time. So I'm going to start doing good habits. I'm going to start filling my day up with good habits. And the one habit that just totally counteracts the gap is just a daily practice. It probably takes about 15 minutes. And that is before you, at the end of your workday or at the end of your actual, awake day, you simply sit down and reflect on the day, and you pick the 5 things that are really positive about the day. And I like writing, so I have a tendency just to write everything out. And you just use a sheet of paper, you write it out. We actually have, booklets and logbooks and Strategic Coach that people can use. And it's called the Positive Focus. And what you do, Joe, you simply write down, what was positive about the day, big or small, doesn't matter. It's just so that it was positive. And then you write down why that was such a great thing, and you write it down. You just reflect on the day. And there's 2 things about this. One is that you immediately feel positive about the day regardless of what happens. So what it means is that you're going to bed that night and you're always going to sleep on a positive note, which has a tremendous impact on your subconscious. To always go to bed at night in a positive mood has a very, very rapid improvement impact on your general well-being. But the other thing is that it's cumulative. So you do it once and it has an impact. You do it 20 times. Each time you do it, between 1 and 20, there's a buildup of a new pattern in your brain. And you reach a point, and I would say it's, you talk about 20 years of doing it in a negative way. It doesn't take 20 years of establishing the new habit to undo it. You just start immediately. Our brains are very fast. There's a logic to our brains, and when your brain senses that a new way of performing a new way of thinking is a lot better than an old way, it makes the improvements really fast. So I've seen this happen with individuals in a matter of 90 days, that they all of a sudden they just have this ability when when they get to the end of the day, they just sum it up in a very positive way. But the other thing is they catch themselves evaluating themselves against the ideal, and they go into kind of like a crisis moment, and they say, what am I doing? I'm doing it wrong here. Why don't I just turn around and see where I've come from? And the moment they turn around and measure how far they've come, they say, I feel better about that. And here's the fact about this. I came up with this about 20 years ago, in response to all the conversations that I was having with my entrepreneurial clients. And people say, well, you must never be in the gap. The gap is being caught in that space between what you've actually accomplished and the ideal. That's the gap. And they say, you must never. I say, well, I would say not more than 5 or 6 times a day. And they say, you go into the gap 5 or 6 times a day? And I said, yeah. And I said, the difference is that I go in and I'm back out a half a minute later. I said, some people go in, they don't come out for 3 years, and I said, you can do a lot of bad things to yourself by being in a negative state for 3 years. You can see the carnage in society around us, Joe, who's got this as a great capability of always being negative towards themselves. So the big thing is that it just gets better and better, and then it connects with other things in your life. And one of the big things it connects with is, since you're grading yourself positively, you start grading other people positively, and you start reinforcing other people's positive accomplishments, and they reciprocate by being very supportive and very positive towards you, so your entire environment around you starts changing.
Yeah, exactly. I love what you said, too, about the carnage in the world from people that have the great capability of being negative towards themselves. Yeah, absolutely. And so everyone listening, please really think about this concept of the gap. At Strategic Coach, strategiccoach.com, they have a great tool called, I think, Getting Out of the Gap.
Yeah, how to avoid the gap. It's called. It's a little book, and I've got a soundtrack with it, so you can listen through to it. But I've seen lives change in a matter of a quarter of a year or half a year, and it's really huge for children. Like, there's a lot of our listeners, I think, probably have children that they know, and if you give children one skill right from the beginning, is just this ability to continually evaluate what they're doing in a positive way. It just sets a tremendous pattern for their whole life.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's fantastic. Well, so let's go on to the second point that you wanted to cover, which I'm sure will be about different types of activities that people can be involved in and how that affects their self-esteem.
Yeah. The cornerstone concept in Strategic Coach is something that we call unique ability, and that is that what I've observed is that individuals are really good at 2 or 3 things, and when I say really good, that they're world class. I believe every human being at the center of what he or she does has a world class capability. In other words, if they would just concentrate on that activity and really devote themselves to it and stay with it for a long time, they would start saying things, first of all, thinking things, saying things, and doing things that other people said were real genius activities. And I've seen this over and over, and it's very interesting. It's not really a function of intelligence at all, and it's not a function of creativity. It's just that there's an activity that you do, and Joe, in the program, we get people to analyze it from 4 perspectives. And the first one is that you're really great at it. Like, anytime you do this activity, it comes easy to you. You do it with a great sense of style and skill. And the second thing is you're passionate about it. You would do this all the time on your own, whether you got paid for it or not. Number 3, it's very energizing. And when you're doing this activity, other people like being around you because they're energized by your performance. And the fourth thing is that you keep getting better at it. So from decade to decade, you're better at 30 than you were at 20, you're better at 50 than you were at 40, and you're better at 80 than you were at 70. You just keep getting better at this activity, and it never stops, the improvement. You're always seeing new possibilities for improving what you're doing. So in Strategic Coach, that's what we do. We get people to just focus on their area of unique ability, and again, this is a time thing. When you're at work, don't spend time doing things that aren't your unique ability, but surround yourself with other people who have different unique abilities. And that supports the unique ability that's in the center.
I was going to ask you about that. Obviously, if someone spends the majority of their time doing things that they're not only really good at, always have an ever-lasting, it's always growing and they're always getting better at it, and it doesn't matter what age they're at, they just keep getting better and better. It would seem to me that would be one of the very best ways to build and maintain self-esteem.
Oh yeah, and the reason is because, and this is the part of that I mentioned, because I just sent you a bit of an outline before we started this, that when you're in your unique ability, the activity is always exciting and always makes you very, very confident. You have this sense of confidence about what you're doing, and the reason is because you're the best person to do this, and nobody else can really match what you do within your unique ability, and it's very exciting because you can always see new possibilities. But the biggest thing is that when you're in your unique ability, you're actually willing to be held accountable for your performance and results. And I really want to stress this point in relationship to self-esteem, Joe, because a lot of people live lives where they never actually know how good they are. And that puts you in a state of tremendous indecision and confusion. So when you're in your unique ability and you're willing to be held accountable, in other words, I will commit myself to producing a particular type of result in the world, and you can judge me on how I do, that builds enormous self-esteem. And so, and you can see it with children when they find out that they're really good at something, and then they're actually in the spotlight and they have to perform. And it could be in any area of activity. And you see it with adults, too, when they're learning a new industry or they're going into a new business or a new market. And they start performing in such a way that the results keep getting better and better. There's this huge jump of self-esteem. So accountability and being accountable for performance and results, I see as very, very crucial to high self-esteem. And you can't do that continually and consistently unless the activity that you're doing is very exciting to you and you feel confident about doing that activity today, tomorrow, and for the rest of your life. And just the opposite, I see people spending their time in activities where they just aren't any good, and their days are filled with conflict, their days are filled with failure, a tremendous sense of frustration, and all those lend themselves immediately to low self-esteem. They get very, very dragged down by their day-to-day activities, and I see this in larger organizations more than entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, for the most part, have chosen their path in life because they want to be free to focus on their unique abilities. But there are people who work in large, bureaucracies where it's a job, and they don't like the job. And they spend 8 hours a day doing something they don't like doing, and it wears them down. And so, yeah, I think it's one of the primary responsibilities, the part of every individual, is to seek out in their lifetime and in their life the thing that they really find constantly produces a sense of excitement and confidence.
What you're just saying about people that are working in bureaucracies and stuff, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are continually maybe misunderstood and mislabeled by non-entrepreneurs, and many of them are considered, type A workaholics, and of course Strategic Coach really helps people tremendously with those issues when they're very self-destructive. And so you've got these driven individuals that are onto many different things, and taking my own sort of personality and my own mindset, basically. I'm very distractible, but at the same time, I'm pretty aware. I'm pretty aware of what is going on, and people that would spend their whole life doing something that they don't like, they hate, they despise. Why are these people trapped, Dan? I mean, do you think they're just simply not aware of it? Is their self-esteem so low that they just don't feel they can do something different? Or, I mean, is it just wiring? I wonder what's the cause of people spending so much of their activity on things that they absolutely suck at, that they despise, and they're bringing them no joy, which therefore leads to very low self-esteem.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's one of those things that starts, Joe, very early in life. I mean, the school system, is a large bureaucracy for most children. And, there's sort of this lesson that you get very early. Well, you're not supposed to like the classes. You're not supposed to, really enjoy what you're doing. You have to do it. You have to put in your time. And, originally the public school system, which, as it exists today, was actually created to get people used to the fact that they were going to live their entire lives doing boring jobs in large factories and bureaucracies. So we're going to teach them how to survive boredom for 12 years, 8 years, 12 years, so because they have to get ready to be bored for the rest of their life. We lived in times where just having a job and just eating was a big thing, and so that people were willing to put up with that, Work isn't supposed to be something that, gives you happiness. It's supposed to put food on the table. That's what it's for. It's to keep a house, keep a roof over your head. But we've changed radically in the last 40 years. The reason is because we're now not living in an era of mills and factories and large bureaucracies, but we're living in an era when there are all these self-empowering technologies that people can now design their own lives. And I think what you have in society right now is an awareness that other people are having a really good time with their lives. Tim Ferriss probably writes about this, the possibility of this, better than anyone else that we know, Joe, with his 4-hour work week.
Right.
And he just talks about all the ways that you can use all sorts of capabilities and resources that are available to the average person in today's world just to design the life that really makes you happy, to do work that really pleases you, and really have a life that's really great. And just by natural choice and direction, I think entrepreneurs, in comparison with the rest of the population, are at the very end of a bell curve in people who design their own life. But even there, they can get caught in the trap of ending up doing lots of activities. Well, I just have to do it. So it's really interesting. And I just ask them lots of questions. Well, do you like doing that? No. Are you any good at it when you do it? No. Does it produce really great results? No. And I said, well, why are you doing it? Well, you just have to. I said, no, I don't see that you just have to do it. I see that you have a choice at it. It may take some time to, change your schedule and change your obligations and everything else. But if you set a goal a year from now of not doing this, and you really worked at it, you could get free from this. And that's really what we do, is we chip away so that they're just down into this very tight circle. Joe, I think that we've had marvelous conversations, in-depth conversations over 13 years, and I've just seen you go from doing lots and lots of stuff that really frustrates you and annoy you to more and more just being sort of this star connector in this world, this ability to create almost instant marketing campaigns because that's what you love doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people, one of the things when I talk about you all the time and I describe you to other people, some of the things that come up, there's always he's very smart and, he has great perspective on stuff, but more than anything, you're just a happy human being. You think very highly of yourself. You think very highly of the world. You are a great contributor. You have a life. You walk the walk and talk the talk better than anyone that I know. And, that which you talk about and that you share with others, you happen to live as a lifestyle. So when you are teaching entrepreneurs to, take free days, because free days isn't a reward for doing hard work and, stuff that you don't even like, what it is it's a necessity for you staying in top physically, mentally, spiritually, you name it, so that you can, do the best you can, you can do and be the best you can be, and at the same time be fulfilled and confident and happy about that. And so, the thing that I love more than anything is not only seeing productive human beings that create a lot of stuff, but they also get to smell the roses. I mean, they actually appreciate all of the things that they do in their life. And there's a lot of people that do for others, but they don't do well for themselves.
Yeah, and all of us, we hear what someone says, and we watch if that, in fact, is what they do. And if there's any disconnect between what they're saying and the way that they're actually acting, I think one is that it deprives from the value of the message. It cuts down and undermines the message. So I'm just very conscious. Don't go around talking about how you can just be excited and confident unless you're walking around being excited and confident. Don't talk about living a positive life if you're not living a positive life. And so, I'm very, very conscious of the fact that what's happening backstage has to measure what's being performed front stage.
Well, last thing on this particular point that I'd like to kind of delve into a little bit is feelings. If someone wants the feeling of, say, joy or confidence or happiness in a variety of positive emotions, my belief is that those come out of what you do, not just sitting around thinking about it. There's a lot of people that will read every self-help book and go to every seminar on the planet and still be very miserable because they have not converted their activities into things that produce those emotions. It's like the analogy, don't expect a flame if you're not willing to put in the wood into the fire. It's just, you're not going to get any heat. I think a lot of people live in a way to where, just think positive, and it's like, while they do a bunch of shit that has nothing to do with, generating the feeling of positiveness. And so I wanted to ask, what's your take on that? I mean, if someone wants higher self-esteem, listening to us talk about it, going through all of Nathaniel Branden's materials, which are phenomenal, is very beneficial. But there's this thing called taking certain actions along with it, not just having the knowledge. And I wanted to get your take on, I guess, action and behavior. Is that the prerequisite before having the feelings of happiness?
Yeah.
As an example of happiness, it could be any feeling, but.
Yeah, I think happiness is a lousy goal. And the reason is because it actually isn't a goal, it's sort of an ideal. Mm-hmm. And people whose goal is to be happy, I find, one is that they're eternally frustrated, by it. I think happiness is a byproduct, and to a certain extent, self-esteem is a byproduct. You have to do correct things. You have to have the correct thoughts going on in your brain. You have to be relating to other human beings in an appropriate way. You have to be producing certain kinds of results. And I think that the self-esteem is actually byproducts from that. I'm not going to get into an academic debate about this, but I've just noticed that people who put an emphasis on being really useful to people around them tend to have a much higher sense of self-esteem and happiness about themselves than people whose primary focus is happiness, and then they're noticing how other people are constantly interfering with their life, and so their life becomes one of complaining how other people aren't supporting them and being happy, which is kind of, it's not a pleasant person to be around, but they never really achieve that happiness that has become their primary focus. So, I talked about how you measure yourself, with the gap concept and then the whole thing of unique ability and, keeping yourself in an exciting and confident zone of activity. I think that there's a third one, Joe, that I suggested for the presentation, and that is that pick who you want to be a hero to in life. It's very, very important to align your really great activities with a particular type of individual that you truly and consistently and always want to be a hero to. And I'll just introduce it, and then you can talk a little bit about, because I'm heading in the direction of value creation here.
Yeah. I got it. So, please describe the whole concept of being.
Well, for example, when I had my great breakthrough with Strategic Coach, back in the late 70s and early 80s, it occurred to me one day that there was only one kind of person on the planet that I really wanted to be a hero to, and that was an entrepreneur. And, I get lots of requests from corporations and from government bureaus and from nonprofits and, and all sorts of other kinds of organizations and different kinds of industries. And they say, the stuff that you're doing would be so valuable here. Politicians, I have politicians phoning me, and I said, well, it's flattering that you say so, and I'm sure that if someone were to take the time and take our materials and actually put them in a form where they could be used in your environment, I'm sure it would produce, a good impact. But I have to tell you, I'm not interested in it. And they say, well, and this is really interesting, Joe, and you've probably had this happen, is that the world needs this and you have an obligation to do it. And I said, no, I don't. I don't have an obligation to do anything, actually. I say, I don't think of life in terms of obligations. I think of life in terms of commitments. And I have to tell you right now, my only commitments in life are to people who I actually want to be a hero to, which means that I just want to see these individuals do extraordinarily well in their lives, and I want to contribute as much as I possibly can to making them more capable and using their abilities to get and create the life that they want to create for themselves, and then to do the maximum amount of good in the world for other people. And for me, entrepreneurs are at the center of my universe. So that's actually the only kind of person that I want to be a hero to. And then, and that's in the, in my professional life. And then I have a certain network of individuals who I know on a personal basis, starting with my partner and wife, Bab Smith, that I always want to be a hero to her. My day begins and ends being a hero to my wife, and I'm very conscious if I'm falling short, and my team, the team that I work with at work, I want to be a hero to them. I want Strategic Coach to be a great place to work at, where it's very enjoyable and everybody has a chance to develop their abilities. I want to be a hero to them. Outside of that, those three, one which is very, very close by, and then just as a general sense, I don't want to be a hero to anybody else. I don't mean anyone else ill will or anything like that, but I'm just not going to be excited doing what I'm doing for anyone else, and I'm willing to totally obligate myself and commit myself to helping this one kind of person, and that's been true for the last almost 40 years, and it'll be true for the rest of my life. And I find that commitment to being a hero to a particular type of person is very, very fundamental to having a sense of high self-esteem.
Yeah, fantastic. What I'd like to actually attach to that concept is something I've heard you talk a lot about with people that will go out and make statements like, I want to save the world, I want to change the world, and they're trying to do everything. And you really got me thinking about that a while back. I mean, I don't think I've ever had this discussion with you, but, people that are running around, in many cases, talking about how they want to change the world, save the world, replant the rainforest, save the whales, save starving children, do this, do that, and all this other stuff. And it's, it's great that they want to do good stuff in the world. And a lot of these people that are saying it, it's just that. They're just saying it. They're not really having any impact because they're diffused. They're all over the map. And just like if someone, comes in and wants to learn marketing strategy, the more we can help them niche their market and identify the target, we're definitely increasing their chances of actually selling something and having some success and making some money if that's the goal. Well, the same thing here with if you want to do good in the world, but your idea of doing good in the world is like, let's just try to do everything for everyone, or I want to impact everyone. You're really not impacting anyone. And you getting very clear on being a hero, I think it's a really, really important discussion to not only to share with everyone listening, but to have everyone leave this particular call that we're doing and really think about, not only who do I want to be a hero to, but how is that going to impact, their self-esteem? Because in the notes that you gave me prior to this, one thing you wrote is knocking yourself out for people that you don't like, admire, or respect is a sure recipe for low self-esteem. And so I want to ask you about that. Two things. One, this whole concept of people that say, I want to save the world. And the second is, the knocking yourself out for people that you don't like, admire, or respect, because I think people spend an exorbitant amount of time supporting or working with people that they don't like or respect, and it's like, what the hell is going on there? So let's cover the first one first, which is the whole save the world concept, which is really the antithesis of like trying to find one person to be a hero for. It's like trying to think that you are somehow positioned to be the one that's going to just fix everything.
Yeah, and Joe, as you were describing those two scenarios, I was thinking of a word which I think probably more than any word in the English language undermines self-esteem, and it's the word should. Mm-hmm. And should is always a very, very guilt-laden word, and the reason is I don't want to do it, but I should want to do it. And you've just killed your self-esteem in one sentence. And there are people who live their whole lives out of the thinking that goes along with the word should, and that is that we should be wanting to save the world. We should want to be that, but they don't actually do that. What they want to do is hang out with their friends and do a good job at work. But they feel they should express this, and there's a certain number of emotions and thoughts that they feel they should express and everything else, but they don't actually feel it,
Right.
And so the whole saving the world, my feeling is, first of all, the world is an abstraction. There is no such thing as the world. And I remember Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of England, she said, I take care of society, but I don't know its phone number. And She says, can you tell me what society's phone number is so I can phone them up and find out what they want?
I love that. That's great.
And it just, she just cut all this garbage that happens in political circles and bureaucratic circles, the saving the environment. Yeah, well, plant a tree in your backyard. You've done more than most people do who, if you want to go in that direction, pick on a particular tree, as you know, Joe, Babs and I are fanatic about landscaping, and I like the world that surrounds my house. I've got a couple houses, and that's the environment that I take care of, And,
that's awesome.
And we got lots of flowers, lots of trees. People love coming there. They like being there. So to a certain extent, we've saved the environment.
Right.
We've saved the environment for our friends. Basically, yeah. But people. Anytime you get caught up in an abstraction in life, like justice and and everything like that, you've automatically cut off the ability to actually be really useful in the world, because it's not directed towards a specific. The only things that really constitute progress in the world are things that we're doing on a specific basis. I'm going to do this specific action to produce this specific result so this specific person can be better off. And there's such a check-off system there that you're actually doing something useful and good and productive. And it's that getting that feedback from the world. I can't, I just read something today, and I'm sure some of the listeners have different viewpoints on this, but Al Gore just gave a speech in I think it was in Norway or Sweden, but he left his car running for the entire 60 minutes outside. His car was running outside, and I was just thinking of the disconnect there. He's in there talking about carbon, we got to cut down on the carbon, and he kept his car running for the entire hour that he was in giving the lecture, and it's just a disconnect, turn your car off. That's a good step on cutting down on carbon emissions.
Exactly, for him being the one delivering the message, totally. That's hysterical.
Yeah. So that's it. So just remind me again what the second part of this was, because I got so taken up. I have very strong feelings about this.
It's really about why do people spend time with people they don't like or respect. And let me finish the thought here with what you're saying, so people will get some context of how this relates to me. With what you just said about taking care of the landscaping, I don't want anyone to misconstrue that, Dan, that Dan doesn't care about the environment or do whatever. What it is because you're so clear on what it is who you want to impact, you become far more impactful in all other areas in this way. Like, for instance, I'm the number one fundraiser for Richard Branson's charity Virgin Unite as of today. Hopefully someone will beat me out and do a bunch of stuff and, raise a bunch of money and coordinate a bunch of people and do all that sort of stuff. But I don't think I ever would have accomplished that and been able to do it had I not even been in strategic coach. That has been an area that has really helped me become a better human being. Many of the things that I've done have been a result of different people that I've met. Why am I participating in this series with Nathaniel Branden in order to get his information out? Because Nathaniel has been very, very impactful to my life and my ability in the world. So through the teachings and the wisdom of other individuals, I've been able to go out and do great things. And as an indirect, as a byproduct of associating with certain individuals, many, many thousands of individuals that want to be heroes to different people, different organizations, are able to do that as a direct result of someone like Dan Sullivan or someone like Nathaniel Branden. So I want to be a hero to Nathaniel Branden. I want to be a hero to Dan Sullivan. I want to be a hero to the people that are entrepreneurs that are participating here, because through this whole sort of process, that to me is the ultimate form of value creation. So when you really get clear on who you want to be a hero to, if this is your thing and something over here isn't, your ability to affect people in a much more stronger, actionable way, so if someone really does want to do good in the world, I think the way to really do good in the world is not running around talking about it. It's actually get really clear on who you want to do good in the world for and just take steps to do it.
Yeah, and spend a lifetime doing it. You just have to stay with things, and I don't think you can stay with anything for a long time that doesn't give you a tremendous positive sense of satisfaction and self-esteem about yourself. You just can't stay with it. And that's why you see people flitting from causes to causes. They thought this cause was going to give them self-esteem. They think this cause will give them self-esteem. But none of them do, because that's not where it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from how you're measuring on the inside, and whether the activity that you're doing really excites you and you feel confident about it, and who you're doing it for. You really want to be a hero to those people. So those three things line up very nicely.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, last thing I was going to ask you about that was, why do people find themselves supporting or working with people that they don't like or respect? We have a world filled with people that are, they're just they're not focusing their time, their energy, and their talents on, they're like they suffer fools continuously, and the byproduct of that is probably a very low self-esteem.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, there was a television program, and I think it was Uncle Bob or something. It was a local television station in Cleveland, and the guy was very popular. It was for children. And one time he came off camera from doing a show, and they left the sound on. He said, "That ought to fix the little bastards." And it was like such a disconnect. He was fired the next day. He was fired because he really hated kids. He made his whole living entertaining kids, but he absolutely hated them. And he had a really mean attitude, and in his personal life didn't treat children really well at all. And I said, "What? What's going on there? Look, Uncle Bob, find somebody you want to be a hero to, And so you can come off stage and say, 'Oh, I love this work so much, and I'm doing so much good.'" So, people get into weird situations out of the shoulds in their life. They should do this and they should do this, and they get all twisted out of shape, and their lives get twisted out of shape because they're not really following what's really true on the inside. What gives them confidence, what makes them feel positive, what gives them a sense of that they're creating real value in the world. And so, life is a habit, and you can get into the habit of, not measuring correctly. You can get into the habit of not focusing your activities where you get, a sense of excitement and confidence. You can get into the habit of not being a hero. A lot of people, when I tell them that concept, Joe, they're utterly surprised, and they said, "Gee, I'd never thought about that, being a hero." And I said, "Yeah, I really want to stick out in the minds of the people that I'm working with as being one of the most useful people in their life." And I said, "I'm just totally turned on day in, day out. I've been at this since 1974, and every day I get up, I'm just totally turned on about the help that I'm going to give to other people, during the course of that day, and I do it in a form of an activity that I'm always excited and confident about. And when I get to the evening before I go to bed, I measure all the great things I did that day. So it's a nice positive circuit that I'm in. One contributes to the other. If one gets stronger, the other two get stronger.
Yeah, totally. Well, and you've exhibited that and shown that as proof by what we're actually doing today, by continuing to share what it is you know works and helps entrepreneurs with other people, so that they can they can learn from this. And part of their investment in mastering self-esteem is to be introduced to great thinkers and people that have great perspectives that will enhance and reinforce what it is that everyone is learning and has learned through the Mastering Self-Esteem program. So to summarize, the three concepts we talked about today was the gap concept. The second was unique ability, focusing on exciting and confident activities, drowning out your bad habits, if you even want to call them that, which is things that are areas where you love and enjoy or are constantly getting better. And the third is being a hero. And these are all concepts that you go very deep with in the Strategic Coach program. So for anyone that wants further elaboration on this, Dan, how do they find out more about doing so in Strategic Coach and the knowledge products that you guys offer?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe, for the opportunity. The website is just www.strategiccoach.com, and it's it's a very full and active website, so we're constantly updating it. And a lot of our knowledge products, books, audios, and our various programs that we offer for entrepreneurs are listed on there. And if you want to just directly contact, we have a North American-wide 1-800 number, 1-800-387-3206. 1-800-387-3206. Or if you're, if you're outside of the United States and Canada, you can just go to 416-531-7355. And so.
I think I'm going to call right now and just.
And I have to tell you, if I answer when you phone, you should go out and buy a lottery ticket. It'll be a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to be calling to get dead on the phone, so make sure that you realize that early. And the Strategic Coach program is fantastic. I mean, I've been a client for over 13 years now, and it is truly one of the greatest things I've ever done. And what is really sort of interesting about this, and I've never told you this, Dan, it's the first time I heard about Nathaniel Branden was you talking about Nathaniel Branden, not even in depth, just like mentioning that. And then Lisa Wagner, who's been my CEO in one of the divisions of my company, she had actually read Nathaniel's book, The Art of Living Consciously, and that was the first Nathaniel Branden book that I had actually read. And then that led to The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, which is an amazing book, and Taking Responsibility, and then me meeting Nathaniel in person and becoming friends with him. And voila, I'll leave out all the other stuff, but here we are today, and it's such a pleasure of mine to be able to have you as one of the final people in the Mastering Self-Esteem series that we actually interview and share with everyone, and at the same time being able to put together this body of work that we hope lasts for many, many years and impacts thousands of people in a positive way. And I really, on behalf of myself and Evan and everyone, John Butcher and all of the people that we've interviewed and offer, and everyone involved, including Mr. Nathaniel Branden himself, we just appreciate everyone investing in this. and wanting to improve yourself. So the last thing I'll ask you, Dan, having said everything you've said, what any final piece of advice for going forward, how would you recommend a person continually grow their confidence and self-esteem?
Well, this all starts with Nathaniel, and if you think back, in the 60s, he was the first one to really define this whole territory. So I think that almost anyone who's dealt with the whole subject of self-esteem is really operating within a map that was created by Nathaniel Branden. So I think that the contributors to this program are giving a lot of specific applications, but probably everybody, if they told the truth, there was a central sort of place where all this idea really came from in the first place, and I think Nathaniel is right in the middle of everything that ever happened there. So I'm just delighted that I could contribute today, Joe. It's always one of the highlights of my day or my week or my quarter when I get to collaborate with you on a project, and I just want to thank you. And the common theme here is that there's just millions of people whose lives are a lot better because they were influenced by Nathaniel's thinking, and I know personally that there's just an incredibly large number of people whose lives are better because they know Joe Polish. So, I think there's just a common theme here, and that's what I aspire to in my work. So it's a marvelous sort of community that's come together on this project.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for taking the time. And to all of the listeners, yes, please, share everything you've learned today. Dan talked earlier about a positive focus, and I would encourage you to take out a piece of paper right now and write, what are the positive things that you actually have learned as a result of not only listening to us today, but going through Nathaniel's series. And you have a tremendous amount of tools available to you, from sentence completion work to everything that's part of the Mastering Self-Esteem program. So check out strategiccoach.com. I'd highly encourage you to get all of the knowledge products related to unique ability and the gap, and it'll enhance everything that you're learning through Mastering Self-Esteem. And share anything that you learned today with someone close to you as soon as you can, and that's what's going to keep it going. And and I just appreciate you, Dan, and I appreciate all of our listeners today. So everyone have a great day, great week, great month, and hopefully a great life. Thank you so much.
Hello, this is Joe Polish. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this interview. I hope you found it very useful. Please give me your feedback on all of the interviews that you listen to. I'd love to hear your feedback so we can always deliver a great program for you. Our website is www.joepolish.com, and we also have a Joe Polish Recommends section, so you can take a lot of the ideas and concepts that you hear on my Genius Network interview series and apply them to your business and find vendors and resources. You can go to joepolish.com to find that information and click on the Joe Polish Recommends section. And also, if you would like to find out about more interviews and invest in more useful Genius Network series interviews, go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks, and eat your competition alive.